This audio presentation of the Law of Success in 16 Lessons by Napoleon Hill is brought to you by audioenlightenment.com. Copyright 2011, all rights reserved. This course is dedicated to Andrew Carnegie, who suggested the writing of the course, and to Henry Ford, whose astounding achievements form the foundation for practically all the 16 lessons of the course, and to Edwin C. Barnes, a business associate of Thomas A. Edison, whose close personal friendship over a period of more than 15 years served to help the author carry on in the face of great variety of adversities and much temporary defeat met with in organizing this course. Who said it could not be done? And what great victories has he to his credit which qualify him to judge others accurately? Napoleon Hill. Time is a master worker that heals the wounds of temporary defeat and equalizes the inequalities in rights and the wrongs of the world. There is nothing impossible with time. The Law of Success, Lesson 1, The Mastermind. You can do it if you believe you can. This is a course on the fundamentals of success. Success is very largely a matter of adjusting oneself to the ever-varying and changing environments of life, in a spirit of harmony and poise. Harmony is based upon understanding of the forces constituting one's environment. Therefore, this course is in reality a blueprint that may be followed straight to success, because it helps the student to interpret, understand, and make the most of these environmental forces of life. Before you begin reading the Law of Success lessons, you should know something of the history of the course. You should know exactly what the course promises to those who follow it until they have assimilated the laws and principles upon which it is based. You should know its limitations as well as its possibilities as an aid in your fight for a place in the world. From the viewpoint of entertainment, the Law of Success course would be a poor second for most any of the monthly periodicals of the snappy story variety, which may be found upon the newsstands of today. The course has been created for the serious-minded person who devotes at least a portion of his or her time to the business of succeeding in life. The author of the Law of Success course has not intended to compete with those who write purely for the purpose of entertaining. The author's aim in preparing this course has been of a twofold nature, namely, first to help the earnest student find out what are his and her weaknesses, and secondly, to help create a definite plan for bridging those weaknesses. The most successful men and women on earth have had to correct certain weak spots in their personalities before they began to succeed. The most outstanding of these weaknesses, which stand between men and women and success, are intolerance, cupidity, greed, jealousy, suspicion, revenge, egotism, conceit, the tendency to reap where they have not sown, and the habit of spending more than they earn. All of these common enemies of mankind, and many more not here mentioned, are covered by the Law of Success course in such a manner that any person of reasonable intelligence may master them with but little effort or inconvenience. You should know at the very outset that the Law of Success course has long since passed through the experimental state, that it already has to its credit a record of achievement that is worthy of serious thought and analysis. You should know also that the Law of Success course has been examined and endorsed by some of the most practical minds of this generation. The Law of Success course was first used as a lecture and was delivered by its author in practically every city and in many of the smaller localities throughout the United States over a period of more than 7 years. Perhaps you were one of the many hundreds of thousands of people who heard this lecture. During these lectures, the author had assistants located in the audience for the purpose of interpreting the reaction of those who heard the lecture, and in this manner he learned exactly what effect it had upon people. As a result of this study and analysis, many changes were made. The first big victory was gained for the Law of Success philosophy when it was used by the author as the basis of a course with which 3,000 men and women were trained as a sales army. The majority of those people were without previous experience of any sort in the field of selling. Through this training, they were enabled to earn more than $1 million for themselves and paid the author $30,000 for his services, covering a period of approximately 6 months. The individuals and small group of salespeople who have found success through the aid of this course are too numerous to be mentioned in this introduction, but the number is large and the benefits they derived from the course were definite. The Law of Success philosophy was brought to the attention of the late Don R. Mellett, former publisher of the Canton, Ohio Daily News, who formed a partnership with the author of the course and was preparing to resign as publisher of the Canton Daily News and take up the business management of the author's affairs when he was assassinated on July 16, 1926. Prior to his death, Mr. Mellett had made arrangements with Judge Elbert Gary, who was then chairman of the board of the United States Steel Corporation, to present the Law of Success course to every employee of the Steel Corporation, at a total cost of something like $150,000. This plan was halted because of Judge Gary's death, but it proves that the author of the Law of Success has produced an educational plan of an enduring nature. Judge Gary was eminently prepared to judge the value of such a course, and the fact that he analyzed the Law of Success philosophy and was preparing to invest the huge sum of $150,000 in it is proof of the soundness of all that is said in behalf of the course. You will observe in this general introduction to the course a few technical terms which may not be plain to you. Do not allow this to bother you. Make no attempt at first reading to understand these terms. They will be plain to you after you read the remainder of the course. This entire introduction is intended only as a background for the other 15 lessons of the course, and you should read it as such. You will not be examined on this introduction, but you should read it many times, as you will get from it at each reading a thought or an idea which you did not get on the previous reading. In this introduction you will find a description of a newly discovered law of psychology, which is the very foundation stone of all outstanding personal achievement. This law has been referred to by the author as the mastermind, meaning a mind that is developed through the harmonious cooperation of 2 or more people who ally themselves for the purpose of accomplishing any given task. If you are engaged in the business of selling, you may profitably experiment with this law of mastermind in your daily work. It has been found that a group of 6 or 7 salespeople may use the law so effectively that their sales may be increased to unbelievable proportions. Life insurance is supposed to be the hardest thing on earth to sell. This ought not to be true, with an established necessity such as life insurance, but it is. Despite this fact, a small group of men working for the Prudential Life Insurance Company, whose sales are mostly small policies, formed a little friendly group for the purpose of experimenting with the law of the mastermind, with the result that every man in the group wrote more insurance during the first 3 months of the experiment than he had overwritten an entire year before. What may be accomplished through the aid of this principle by any small group of intelligent life insurance salesmen who have learned how to apply the law of mastermind will stagger the imagination of the most highly optimistic and imaginative person. The same may be said of other selling groups who are engaged in selling merchandise and other more tangible forms of services than life insurance. Bear this in mind as you read this Introduction to the Law of Success course, and it is not unreasonable to expect that this introduction alone may give you sufficient understanding of the law to change the entire course of your life. It is the personalities back of a business which determine the measure of success the business will enjoy. Modify those personalities so they are more pleasing and more attractive to the patrons of the business, and the business will thrive. In any of the great cities of the United States, one may purchase merchandise of similar nature and price in scores of stores. Yet you will find there is always one outstanding store which does more business than any of the others. And the reason for this is that back of the store is a man or men who has attended to the personality of those who come in contact with the public. People buy personalities as much as they do merchandise, and it is in a question if they are not influenced more by the personalities with which they come in contact than they are by the merchandise. Life insurance has been reduced to such a scientific basis that the cost of insurance does not vary to any great extent, regardless of the company from when one purchases it. Yet out of the hundreds of life insurance companies doing business, less than a dozen companies do the bulk of the business of the United States. Why? Personalities. 99 people out of every 100 who purchase their life insurance policies do not know what is in their policies, and what seems more startling, do not seem to care. What they really purchase is the pleasing personality of some man or woman who knows the value of cultivating such a personality. Your business in life, or at least the most important part of it, is to achieve success. Success within the meaning of that term was covered by this course on the 15 Laws of Success, is the attainment of your definite chief aim without violating the rights of other people. Regardless of what your major aim in life may be, you will attain it with much less difficulty after you learn how to cultivate a pleasing personality, and after you have learned the delicate art of aligning yourself with others in a given undertaking without friction or envy. One of the greatest problems of life, if not in fact the greatest, is that of learning the art of harmonious negotiation with others. This course was created for the purpose of teaching people how to negotiate their way through life with harmony and poise, free from the destructive effects of disagreement and friction, which brings millions of people to misery, want, and failure every year. With this statement of the purpose of the course, you should be able to approach the lessons with the feeling that a complete transformation is about to take place in your personality. You cannot enjoy outstanding success in life without power, and you can never enjoy power without sufficient personality to influence other people to cooperate with you in the spirit of harmony. This course shows you step by step how to develop such a personality. Lesson by lesson, the following is a statement of that which you may expect to receive from the 15 Laws of Success. Chapter 1. A definite chief aim will teach you how to save the wasted effort which the majority of people expend in trying to find their life work. This lesson will show you how to do away forever with aimlessness and fix your heart and hand upon some definite, well-conceived purpose as a life work. 2. Self-confidence will help you master the 6 basic fears with which every person is cursed: the fear of poverty, the fear of ill health, the fear of old age, the fear of criticism, the fear of loss of love of someone, and the fear of death. It will teach you the difference between egotism and real self-confidence, which is based upon definite, usable knowledge. 3. Habit of saving will teach you how to distribute your income systematically so that a definite percentage of it will steadily accumulate, thus forming one of the greatest known sources of personal power. No one may succeed in life without saving money. There is no exception to this rule, and no one may escape it. 4. Initiative and leadership will show you how to become a leader instead of a follower in your chosen field of endeavor. It will develop in you the instinct for leadership, which will cause you gradually to gravitate to the top in all undertakings in which you participate. 5. Imagination will stimulate your mind so that you will conceive new ideas and develop new plans, which will help you in attaining the object of your definite chief aim. This lesson will teach you how to build new houses out of old stone, so to speak. It will show you how to create new ideas out of old, well-known concepts, and how to put old ideas to new uses. This one lesson alone is the equivalent of a very practical course in salesmanship, and it is sure to prove a veritable goldmine of knowledge to the person who is earnest. 6. Enthusiasm will enable you to saturate all with whom you come in contact with interest in you and in your ideas. Enthusiasm is the foundation of a pleasing personality, and you must have such a personality in order to influence others to cooperate with you. 7. Self-control is the balance wheel with which you control your enthusiasm and direct it where you wish to carry you. This lesson will teach you, in a most practical manner, to become the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. 8. The habit of doing more than paid for is one of the most important lessons of the Law of Success course. It will teach you how to take advantage of the law of increasing returns, which will eventually ensure you a return in money far out of proportion to the service you render. No one may become a real leader in any walk of life without practicing the habit of doing more work and better work than for that for which he is paid. 9. Pleasing personality is the fulcrum of which you must place the crowbar of your efforts, and when so placed with intelligence, it will enable you to remove mountains of obstacles. This one lesson alone has made scores of master salesmen. It has developed leaders overnight. It will teach you how to transform your personality so that you may adapt yourself to any environment or to any other personality in such a manner that you may easily dominate. 10. Accurate thinking is one of the important foundation stones of all enduring success. This lesson teaches you how to separate facts from mere information. It teaches you how to organize known facts into two classes, the important and the unimportant. It teaches you how to determine what is an important fact. It teaches you how to build definite working plans in the pursuit of any calling out of facts. 11. Concentration teaches you how to focus your attention upon one subject at a time until you have worked out practical plans for mastering that subject. It will teach you how to ally yourself with others in such a manner that you may have the use of their entire knowledge to back you up in your own plans and purpose. It will give you a practical working knowledge of the forces around you and show you how to harness and use these forces in furthering your own interests. 12. Cooperation will teach you the value of teamwork in all you do. In this lesson, you will be taught how to apply the law of the mastermind described in this introduction and in Lesson 2 of this course. This lesson will show you how to coordinate your own efforts with those of others in such a manner that friction, jealousy, strife, envy, and cupidity will be eliminated. You will learn how to make use of all that other people have learned about the work in which you are engaged. 13. Profiting by failure will teach you how to make stepping stones out of all your past and future mistakes and failure. It will teach you the difference between failures and temporary defeat, a difference which is very great and very important. It will teach you how to profit by your own failures and by the failures of other people. 14. Tolerance will teach you how to avoid the disastrous effects of racial and religious prejudices, which mean defeat for millions of people who permit themselves to become entangled in foolish arguments over these subjects, thereby poisoning their own minds and closing the door to reason and investigation. This lesson is the twin sister of the one on accurate thought, for the reason that no one may become an accurate thinker without practicing tolerance. Intolerance closes the book of knowledge and writes on the cover, "Fini, I have learned it all." Intolerance makes enemies of those who should be friends. It destroys opportunity and fills the mind with doubt, mistrust, and prejudice. 15. Practicing the Golden Rule will teach you how to make use of this great universal law of human conduct in such a manner that you may easily get harmonious cooperation from any individual or group of individuals. Lack of understanding of the law upon which the Golden Rule philosophy is based is one of the major causes of failure of millions of people who remain in misery, poverty, and want all their lives. This lesson has nothing whatsoever to do with religion in any form, nor with sectarianism, nor with any of the other lessons of this course on the law of success. When you have mastered these 15 laws and made them your own, as you may do within a period of from 15 to 30 weeks, you will be ready to develop sufficient personal power to ensure the attainment of your definite chief aim. The purpose of these 15 laws is to develop or help you organize all the knowledge you have, and all you acquire in the future, so you may turn this knowledge into power. You should read the Law of Success course with a notebook by your side, for you will observe that ideas will begin to flash into your mind as you read, as to ways and means of using these laws in advancing your own interests. You should also begin teaching these laws to those in whom you are most interested, as it is a well-known fact that the more one tries to teach a subject, the more he learns about that subject. A man who has a family of young boys and girls may so indelibly fix these 15 laws of success in their minds that this teaching will change the entire course of their lives. The man with a family should interest his wife in studying this course with him, for reasons which will be plain before you complete reading this introduction. Power is one of the 3 basic objects of human endeavor. Power is of 2 classes, that which is developed through coordination of natural physical laws and that which is developed by organizing and classifying knowledge. Power growing out of organized knowledge is the more important because it places in man's possession a tool with which he may transform, redirect, and to some extent harness and use the other form of power. The object of this reading course is to mark the route by which the student may safely travel in gathering such facts as he may wish to weave into his fabric of knowledge. There are 2 major methods of gathering knowledge, namely by studying, classifying, and assimilating facts which have been organized by other people, and through one's own process of gathering, organizing, and classifying facts, generally called personal experience. This lesson deals mainly with the ways and means of studying the facts and data gathered and classified by other people. The state of advancement known as civilization is but the measure of knowledge which the race has accumulated. This knowledge is of 2 classes, mental and physical. Among the useful knowledge organized by man, he has discovered and cataloged the 80-odd physical elements of which all material forms in the universe consists. By study and analysis and accurate measurements, man has discovered the bigness of the material side of the universe as represented by planets, suns, and stars, some of which are known to be over 10 million times as large as the little earth on which he lives. On the other hand, man has discovered the littleness of the physical forms which constitute the universe by reducing the 80-odd physical elements to molecules, atoms, and finally to the smallest particle, the electron. An electron cannot be seen. It is but a center of force consisting of a positive or a negative. The electron is the beginning of everything of a physical nature. Molecules, atoms, and electrons, to understand both the detail and the perspective of the process through which knowledge is gathered, organized, and classified, it seems essential for the student to begin with the smallest and simplest particles of physical matter, because these are the ABCs with which nature has constructed the entire framework of the physical portion of the universe. The molecule consists of atoms, which are said to be little invisible particles of matter revolving continuously with the speed of lightning, on exactly the same principle that the earth revolves around the sun. These little particles of matter, known as atoms, which revolve in one continuous circuit in the molecule, are said to be made up of electrons, the smallest particles of physical matter. As already stated, the electron is nothing but 2 forms of force. The electron is uniform, of but one class, size, and nature. Thus, in a grain of sand or a drop of water, the entire principle upon which the whole universe operates is duplicated. How marvelous, how stupendous! You may gather some slight idea of the magnitude of it all the next time you eat a meal, by remembering that every article of food you eat, the plate on which you eat it, the tableware and the table itself are, in final analysis, but a collection of electrons. In the world of physical matter, whether one is looking at the largest star that floats through the heavens, or the smallest grain of sand to be found on earth, the object under observation is but an organized collection of molecules, atoms, and electrons, revolving around one another at inconceivable speed. Every particle of physical matter is in a continuous state of highly agitated motion. Nothing is ever still, although nearly all possible matter may appear to the physical eye to be motionless. There is no solid physical matter. The hardest piece of steel is but an organized mass of revolving molecules, atoms and electrons. Moreover, the electrons in a piece of steel are at the same nature and move at the same rate of speed as the electrons in gold, silver, brass, or pewter. The 80-odd forms of physical matter appear to be different from one another, and they are different because they are made up of different combinations of atoms, although the electrons in these atoms are always the same, except that some electrons are positive and some are negative, meaning that some carry a positive charge of electrification while others carry a negative charge. Through the science of chemistry, matter may be broken up into atoms which are within themselves unchangeable. The 80-odd elements are created through and by reason of combining and changing of the positions of the atoms. To illustrate the modus operandi of chemistry through which this change of atomic position is wrought in terms of modern science, add 4 electrons, 2 positive and 2 negative, to the hydrogen atom, and you have the element lithium. Knock out of the lithium atom, composed of 3 positive and 3 negative electrons, 1 positive and 1 negative electron, and you have 1 atom of helium, which is composed of 2 positive and 2 negative electrons. Thus it may be seen that the 80-odd physical elements of the universe differ from one another only in the number of electrons composing their atoms, and the number and arrangement of those atoms in the molecules of each element. As an illustration, an atom of mercury contains 80 positive charges or electrons in its nucleus, and 80 negative outline charges or electrons. If the chemist were to expel 2 of its positive electrons, it would instantly become the metal known as platinum. If the chemist could then go a step further and take from it a negative electron, the mercury atom would then have lost 2 positive electrons and 1 negative. That is 1 positive charge on the whole. Hence it would retain 79 positive charges in the nucleus and 79 outline negative elements, thereby becoming gold. The formula through which this electronic change might be produced has been the object of diligent search by the alchemists all down the ages, and by the modern chemists of today. It is a fact known to every chemist that literally tens of thousands of synthetic substances may be composed out of only 4 kinds of atoms: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. Differences in the number of electrons in atoms confer upon them qualitative chemical differences, though all atoms of any one element are chemically alike. Differences in the number and spatial arrangement of these atoms in groups of molecules constitute both physical and chemical differences in substance, i.e. in compounds. Quite different substances are produced by combinations of precisely the same kind of atoms, but in different proportions. Take from a molecule of certain substance 1 single atom, and they may be changed from a compound necessary to life and growth into a deadly poison. Phosphorus is an example, and thus contains but 1 kind of atom, but some phosphorus is yellow and some is red, varying with the spatial distribution of the atom in the molecules composing the phosphorus. It may be stated as a literal truth that the atom is the universal particle with which nature builds all material forms, from a grain of sand to the largest star that floats through space. The atom is nature's building block, out of which she erects an oak tree or a pine, a rock of sandstone or granite, a mouse or an elephant. Some of the ablest thinkers have reasoned that the earth on which we live and every material particle on the earth began with 2 atoms which attached themselves to each other and through hundreds of millions of years of flight through space kept contacting and accumulating other atoms until step by step the earth was formed. This, they point out, would account for the various and differing strata of the earth's substance, such as the coal beds, the iron ore deposits, the gold and silver deposits, the copper deposits, etc. They reason that, as the earth ruled through the space, it contacted groups of various kinds of nebula, or atoms, which it promptly appropriated through the law of magnetic attraction. There is much to be seen in the Earth's surface composition to support this theory, although there may be no positive evidence of its soundness. These facts concerning the smallest and analyzable particles of matter have been briefly referred to as a starting point from which we shall undertake to ascertain how to develop and apply the law of power. It has been noticed that all matter is in a constant state of vibration or motion, that the molecule is made up of rapidly moving particles called atoms, which in turn are made up of rapidly moving particles called electrons. The vibrating fluid of matter in every particle of matter there is an invisible fluid or force which causes the atoms to circle around one another at an inconceivable rate of speed. This fluid is a form of energy which has never been analyzed. Thus far it has baffled the entire scientific world. But many scientists believe to be the same energy as that which we call electricity. Others prefer to call it vibration. It is believed by some investigators that the rate of speed with which this force, call it whatever you will, moves determines to a large extent the nature of the outward visible appearance of the physical objects of the universe. One rate of vibration of this fluid energy causes what is known as sound. The human ear can detect only the sound which is produced through from 32,000 to 38,000 vibrations a second. As the rate of vibrations per second increases above that which we call sound, they begin to manifest themselves in the form of heat. Heat begins with about 1,500,000 vibrations per second. Still higher up the scale, vibrations begin to register in the form of light. 3 million vibrations per second create violet light. Above this number, vibration sheds ultraviolet rays, which are invisible to the naked eye, and other invisible radiation. And still higher up the scale, just how high no one at present seems to know, vibrations create the power with which man thinks. It is the belief of the author that the fluid portion of all vibration, out of which grow all known forms of energy, is universal in nature, that the fluid portion of sound is the same as the fluid portion of light. The difference in effect between sound and light being only a difference in the rate of vibration. Also that the fluid portion of thought is exactly the same as that in sound, heat, and light, excepting the number of vibrations per second. Just as there is but one form of physical matter, of which the earth and all the other planets, suns, and stars are composed, the electron so is there but one form of fluid energy, which causes all matter to remain in a constant state of rapid motion. Air and ether. The vast space between the suns, moons, stars, and other planets of the universe is filled with a form of energy known as ether. It is this author's belief that the fluid energy which keeps all particles of matter in motion is the same as the universal fluid, known as ether, which fills all the space of the universe. Within a certain distance of the Earth's surface, estimated by some to be about 50 miles, there exists what is called air, which is a gaseous substance composed of oxygen and nitrogen. Air is a conductor of sound vibrations, but a non-conductor of light and higher vibrations, which are carried by the ether. The ether is a conductor of all vibrations from sound to thought. Air is a localized substance which performs, in the main, the service of feeding all animals and plant life with oxygen and nitrogen, without which neither could exist. Nitrogen is one of the chief necessities of plant life, and oxygen one of the mainstreams of animal life. Near the top of very high mountains the air becomes very light, because it contains but little nitrogen, which is the reason why plant life cannot exist there. On the other hand, the light air found in high altitude consists largely of oxygen, which is the chief reason why tuberculosis patients are sent to high altitude. Even this brief statement concerning molecules, atoms, electrons, air, ether, and the like may be heavy reading to the student. But as will be seen shortly, this introduction plays an essential part as the foundation of this lesson. Do not become discouraged if the description of this foundation appears to have none of the thrilling effects of the modern tale of fiction. You are seriously engaged in finding out what your available powers and how to organize and apply these powers. To complete this discovery successfully, you must combine determination, persistency, and a well-defined desire to gather and organize knowledge. The late Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the long-distance telephone and one of the accepted authorities on the subject of vibration, is here introduced in support of this author's theories concerning the subject of vibration. Suppose you have the power to make an iron rod vibrate with any desired frequency in a dark room. At first, when vibrating slowly, its movement will be indicated by only one sense, that of touch. As soon as the vibrations increase, a low sound will emanate from it, and it will appeal to two senses. At about 32,000 vibrations to the second, the sound will be loud and shrill. But at 40,000 vibrations, it will be silent, and the movements of the rod will not be perceived by touch. Its movements will be perceived by no ordinary human sense. From this point up to about 1,500,000 vibrations per second, we have no sense that can appreciate any effect on the intervening vibrations. After that stage is reached, movement is indicated first by the sense of temperature, and then, when the rod becomes red hot, by the sense of sight. At 3 million vibrations, it sheds violet light. Above that, it sheds ultraviolet rays and other invisible radiation, some of which can be perceived by instruments and employed by us. Now it has occurred to me that there must be a great deal to be learned about the effect of those vibrations in the great gap where the ordinary human senses are unable to hear, see, or feel the movement. The power to send wireless messages by ether vibrations lies in that gap. But the gap is so great that it seems that there must be much more. You must make machines practically to supply new senses as the wireless instruments do. Can it be said, when you think of that great gap, that there are not many forms of vibrations that may give us results as wonderful as, or even more wonderful than, the wireless waves? It seems to me that in this gap lie the vibrations which we have assumed to be given off by our brains and nerve cells when we think. But then again, they may be higher up, in the scale beyond the vibrations that produce the ultraviolet rays. Author's note: the last sentence suggests the theory held by this author. Do we need a wire to carry these vibrations? Will they not pass through the ether without a wire, just as the wireless waves do? How will they be perceived by the recipient? Will he hear a series of signals, or will he find that another man's thoughts have entered into his brains? We may indulge in some speculations based on what we know of the wireless waves, which, as I have said, are all we can recognize of the vast series of vibrations which theoretically must exist. If the thought waves are similar to the wireless waves, they must pass from the brain and flow endlessly around the world and the universe. The body and the skull and the other solid obstacles would form no obstruction to their passage, as they pass through the ether which surrounds the molecules of every substance, no matter how solid and dense. You ask if there would not be constant interfering and confusion if other people's thoughts were flowing through our brains and setting up thoughts in them that did not originate with ourselves. How do you know that other men's thoughts are not interfering with yours now? I have noticed a good many phenomena of mind disturbances that I have never been able to explain. For instance, there is the inspiration or the discouragement that a speaker feels in addressing an audience. I have experienced this many times in my life and have never been able to define exactly the physical causes behind it. Many recent scientific discoveries, in my opinion, point to a day, not far distant perhaps, when men will read another man's thoughts, when thoughts will be conveyed directly from brain to brain without intervention of speech, writing, or any of the present known methods of communication. It is not unreasonable to look forward to a time when we will see without eyes, hear without ears, and talk without tongues. Briefly, the hypothesis that mind can communicate directly with mind rests on the theory that thought or vital force is a form of electrical disturbance, that it can be taken up by induction and transmitted to a distance either through a wire or simply through the all-pervading ether, as in the case of wireless telegraph waves. There are many analogies which suggest that thought is of a nature of an electrical disturbance. A nerve, which is on the same substance as the brain, is an excellent conductor of the electrical current. When we first passed an electrical current through the nerves of a dead man, we were shocked and amazed to see him sit up and move. The electrified nerves produced contraction of the muscles very much as in life. The nerves appear to act upon the muscles very much as the electric current acts upon an electromagnet. The current magnetizes a bar of iron placed at right angles to it, and the nerve produces, through the intangible current of vital force that flows through them, contraction of the muscular fibers that are arranged at right angles to them. It would be possible to cite many reasons why thought and vital force may be regarded as the same nature as electricity. The electric current is held to be a wave motion of the ether, the hypothetical substance that fills all space and pervades all substances. We believe that there must be ether because without it the electric current could not pass through a vacuum or sunlight through space. It is reasonable to believe that only a wave motion of a similar character can produce the phenomena of thought and vital force. We may assume that the brain cells act as a battery and that the current produced flows along the nerves. But does it end there? Does it not pass out of the body in waves which flow around the world unperceived by our senses, just as the wireless waves passed unperceived before Hertz and others discovered their existence? Every mind both a broadcasting and a receiving station. This author has proved, times too numerous to enumerate, to his own satisfaction at least, that every human brain is both a broadcasting and a receiving station for vibrations of thought frequency. If this theory should turn out to be a fact and methods of reasonable control should be established, imagine the part it would play in the gathering, classifying, and organizing of knowledge. The possibility, much less the probability of such a reality, staggers the mind of man. Thomas Paine was one of the great minds of the American Revolutionary period. To him more, perhaps, than any other one person, we owe both the beginning and the happy ending of the Revolution. For it was his keen mind that both helped in drawing up the Declaration of Independence and in persuading the signers of that document to translate it into terms of reality. In speaking of the source of his great storehouse of knowledge, Paine thus described it: any person who has made observations on the state of progress of the human mind, by observing his own, cannot but have observed that there are two distinct classes of what are called thoughts: those that we produce in ourselves by reflection and the act of thinking, and those that bolt into the mind of their own accord. I have always made it a rule to treat these voluntary visitors with civility, taking care to examine, as well as I was able, if they were worth entertaining. And it is from them I have acquired almost all the knowledge that I have. As to the learning that any person gains from school education, it serves only like a small capital to put him in the way of beginning learning for himself afterwards. Every person of learning is finally his own teacher, the reason for which is that principles cannot be impressed upon the memory. Their place of mental residence is the understanding, and they are never so lasting as when they begin by conception. In the foregoing words, Paine, the great American patriot and philosopher, described an experience which at one time or another is the experience of every person. Who is there so unfortunate as not to have received positive evidence that thoughts and even complete ideas will pop into the mind from outside sources? What means of conveyance is there for such visitors except the ether? Ether fills the boundless space of the universe. It is the medium of conveyance for all known forms of vibration such as sound, light, and heat. Why should it not be also the medium of conveyance of the vibration of thought? Every mind or brain is directly connected with every other brain by means of the ether. Every thought released by any brain may be instantly picked up and interpreted by all other brains that are in rapport with the sending brain. This author is as sure as his fact as he is that the chemical formula H2O will produce water. Imagine, if you can, what a part this principle plays in every walk of life. Nor is the probability of ether being a conveyor of thought from mind to mind the most astonishing of its performance. It is the belief of this author that every thought vibration released by any brain is picked up by the ether and kept in motion in circuitous wavelengths corresponding in length to the intensity of the energy used in their release. That these vibrations remain in motion forever, that they are one of the two sources from which thoughts which pop into one's mind emanate, the other source being direct and immediate contact through the ether with the brain releasing the thought vibration. Thus it will be seen that if this theory is a fact, the boundless space of the whole universe is now and will continue to become literally a mental library wherein may be found all the thoughts released by mankind. The author is here laying the foundation for one of the most important hypotheses enumerated in the lesson Self-Confidence, a fact which the student should keep in mind as he approaches that lesson. This is a lesson on organized knowledge. Most of the useful knowledge to which the human race has become heir has become preserved and accurately recorded in nature's Bible. By turning back the pages of this unalterable Bible, man has read the story of the terrific struggle through and out of which the present civilization has grown. The pages of this Bible are made up of the physical elements of which this earth and other planets consists, and of the ether which fills the space. By turning back the pages written on stone and covered near the surface of this earth on which he lives, man has uncovered the bones, skeletons, footprints, and other unmistakable evidence of the history of animal life on this earth, planted there for his enlightenment and guidance by the hand of Mother Nature throughout unbelievable periods of time. The evidence is plain and unmistakable. The great stone pages of nature's Bible found on this earth, and the endless pages of that Bible represented by the ether, wherein all past human thought has been recorded, constitute an authentic source of communication between the Creator and man. This Bible has begun before man had reached the thinking stage, indeed before man had reached the amoeba stage of development. This Bible is above and beyond the power of man to alter. Moreover, it tells its story, not in the ancient dead languages or hieroglyphics of half-savage races, but in universal language, which all have eyes may read. Nature's Bible, from which we have derived all the knowledge that is worth knowing, is one that no man may alter or in any manner tamper with. The most marvelous discovery yet made by man is that of the recently discovered radio principle, which operates through the aid of ether, an important portion of nature's Bible. Imagine the ether picking up the ordinary vibration of sound and transforming that vibration from audio frequency into radio frequency, carrying it to a properly attuned receiving station, and then transforming it back into its original form of audio frequency, all in the flash of a second. It should surprise no one that such a force could gather up the vibration of thought and keep that vibration in motion forever. The established and known fact of instantaneous transmission of sound through the agency of the ether by means of the modern radio apparatus removes the theory of transmission of thought vibration from mind to mind, from the possible to the probable. The master mind, we come now to the next step in the description of the ways and means by which one may gather, classify, and organize useful knowledge. Through harmonious alliance of two or more minds, out of which grows a mastermind. The term mastermind is abstract and has no counterpart in the field of known facts, except to a small number of people who have made a careful study of the effect of one mind upon other minds. This author has searched in vain through all the textbook and essays available on the subject of the human mind, but nowhere has been able to find even the slightest reference to the principle here described as the mastermind. The term first came to the attention of the author through an interview with Andrew Carnegie in the manner described in Lesson 2. Chemistry of the mind. It is this author's belief that the mind is made up of the same universal fluid energy as that which constitutes the ether which fills the universe. It is a fact as well known to the layman as to the man of scientific investigation that some minds clash the moment they come in contact with each other, while other minds show a natural affinity for each other. Between the two extremes of natural antagonism and natural affinity growing out of the meeting or contacting of minds, there is a wide range of possibilities for varying reactions of mind upon mind. Some minds are so naturally adapted to each other that love at first sight is the inevitable outcome of the contact. Who has not known of such an experience? In other cases, minds are so antagonistic that violent mutual dislike shows itself at first meeting. These results occur without a word being spoken, and without the slightest signs of any of the usual causes for love and hate acting as a stimulus. It is quite probable that the mind is made up of a fluid or substance or energy, call it what you will, similar to, if not in fact the same substance as, the ether. When two minds come close enough to each other to form a contact, the mixing of the units of this mind stuff, let us call it the electrons of the ether, sets up a chemical reaction and starts vibrations which affect the two individuals pleasantly or unpleasantly. The effect of the meeting of two minds is obvious to even the most casual observer. Every effect must have a cause. What could be more reasonable than to suspect that the cause of the change in mental attitude between two minds, which have just come in close contact, is none other than the disturbance of electrons or units of each mind in the process of rearranging themselves in the new field created by that contact? For the purpose of establishing this lesson upon a sound foundation, we have gone a long way toward success by admitting that the meeting or coming in close contact of two minds sets up in each of those minds a certain noticeable effect or state of mind quite different from the one existing immediately prior to contact. While it is desirable, it is not essential to know what is the cause of this reaction of every mind upon mind. That the reaction takes place in every instance is a known fact which gives us a starting point from which we may show what is meant by the term mastermind. A mastermind may be created through the bringing together or blending, in a spirit of perfect harmony, of two or more minds. Out of this harmonious blending, the chemistry of the mind creates a third mind, which may be appropriated and used by one or all of the individual minds. This mastermind will remain available as long as the friendly, harmonious alliance between the individual minds exists. It will disintegrate, and all the evidence of its former existence will disappear the moment the friendly alliance is broken. This principle of mind chemistry is the basis and cause for practically all the so-called soulmate and eternal triangle cases, so many of which unfortunately find their way into the divorce courts and meet with popular ridicule from ignorant and uneducated people who manufacture vulgarity and scandal out of one of the greatest of nature's laws. The entire civilized world knows that the first 2 or 3 years of association after marriage are less often marked by much disagreement, of a more or less petty nature. These are the years of adjustment. If the marriage survives them, it is more than apt to become a permanent alliance. These facts no experienced married person will deny. Again we see the effect without understanding the cause. While there are other contributing causes, yet in the main, lack of harmony during these early years of marriage is due to the slowness of the chemistry of the minds in blending harmoniously. Stated differently, the electrons or units of the energy called the mind are often neither extremely friendly nor antagonistic upon first contact. But through constant association they gradually adapt themselves in harmony, except in rare cases where association has the opposite effect of leading eventually to open hostility between these units. It is a well-known fact that after a man and a woman have lived together for 10 to 15 years, they become practically indistinguishable to each other. Even though there may not be the slightest evidence of the state of mind called love, moreover, this association and relationship sexually not only develops a natural affinity between the two minds, but it actually causes the two people to take on a similar facial expression and to resemble each other closely in many other marked ways. Any competent analysis of human nature can easily go into a crowd of strange people and pick out the wife after having been introduced to her husband. The expression of the eyes, the contour of the faces, and the tone of the voice of people who have long been associated in marriage become similar to a marked degree. So marked is the effect of the chemistry of the human mind that any experienced public speaker may quickly interpret the manner in which his statements are accepted by his audience. Antagonism in the mind of but one person in an audience of 1,000 may be readily detected by the speaker who has learned how to feel and register the effects of antagonism. Moreover, the public speaker can make these interpretations without observing or in any manner being influenced by the expression on the faces of those in his audience. On account of these facts, an audience may cause a speaker to rise to great heights of oratory or heckle him into failure, without making a sound or denoting a single expression of satisfaction or dissatisfaction through the features of the face. All master salesmen know the moment the psychological time for closing has arrived, not by what the prospective buyer says, but from the effect of the chemistry of his mind as interpreted or felt by the salesman. Words often belie the intentions of those speaking them, but a correct interpretation of the chemistry of the mind leaves no loophole for such a possibility. Every able salesman knows that the majority of buyers have the habit of affecting a negative attitude almost to the very climax of the sale. Every able lawyer has developed a sixth sense whereby he is enabled to feel his way through the most artfully selected words of the clever witness who is lying, and correctly interpret that which is in the witness's mind through the chemistry of the mind. Many lawyers have developed this ability without knowing the real source of it. They possess the technique without the scientific understanding upon which it is based. Many salesmen have done the same thing. One who is gifted in the art of correctly judging the chemistry of the minds of others may, figuratively speaking, walk in at the front door of the mansion of a given mind and leisurely explore the entire building, noting all its details, walking out again with a complete picture of the interior of the building, without the owner of the building so much as knowing that he has been entertained a visitor. It will be observed in the lesson Accurate Thinking that this principle may be put to a very practical use, having reference to the principle of the chemistry of the mind. The principle is referred to merely as an approach to the major principles of this lesson. Enough has already been stated to introduce the principle of mind's chemistry, and to prove, with the aid of the student's own everyday experience and the casual observation, that the moment two minds come within close range of each other, a noticeable mental change takes place in both, sometimes registering in the nature of antagonism, and the other times registering in the nature of friendliness. Every mind has what might be termed an electrical field. The nature of this field varies, depending upon the mood of the individual's mind back of it, and upon the nature of the chemistry of the mind creating the field. It is believed by this author that the normal or natural condition of the chemistry of any individual mind is the result of his physical hereditary plus the nature of thoughts which have dominated that mind. That every mind is continuously changing to the extent that the individual's philosophy and general habits of thought change the chemistry of his or her own mind. These principles the author believes to be true. That any individual may voluntarily change the chemistry of his or own mind so that it will be either attract or repel all with whom it comes in contact is a known fact. Stated in another manner, any person may assume a mental attitude which will attract and please others or repel and antagonize them, and this without the aid of words or facial expression, or other form of bodily movement or demeanor. Go back now to the definition of a mastermind, a mind which grows out of the blending and coordination of two or more minds in a spirit of perfect harmony. And you will catch the full significance of the word harmony as it is here used. Two minds will not blend, nor can they be coordinated, unless the element of perfect harmony is present, wherein lies the secret of success or failure of practically all business and social partnerships. Every sales manager and every military commander and every leader in any walk of life understands the necessity of an esprit de corps, a spirit of common understanding and cooperation in the attainment of success. This mass spirit of harmony of purpose is obtained through discipline, voluntary or forced, of such a nature that the individual minds become blended into a mastermind, by which is meant that the chemistry of the individual mind is modified in such a manner that these minds blend and function as one. These methods through which this blending process takes place are as numerous as the individuals engaged in the various forms of leadership. Every leader has his or own method of coordinating the minds of the followers. One will use force, another uses persuasion. One will play upon the fear of penalties, while another plays upon rewards, in order to reduce the individual minds of a given group of people to where they may be blended into a mass mind. The student will not have to search deeply in the history of statesmanship, politics, business, or finance to discover the techniques employed by the leaders in these fields in the process of blending the minds of individuals into a mass mind. The really great leaders of the world, however, have been provided by nature with a combination of mind chemistry favorable as a nucleus of attraction for other minds. Napoleon was a notable example of a man possessing the magnetic type of mind which had a very decided tendency to attract all minds with which it came into contact. Soldiers followed Napoleon to certain death without flinching, because of the impelling or attracting nature of his personality, and that personality was nothing more or less than the chemistry of his mind. No group of minds can be blended into a mastermind if one of the individuals of that group possesses one of those extremely negative, repellent minds. The negative and positive minds will not blend in the sense here described as a mastermind. Lack of knowledge of this fact has brought many an otherwise able leader to defeat. Any able leader who understands this principle of mind chemistry may temporarily blend the minds in practically any group of people, so that it will represent a mass mind. But the composition will disintegrate almost the very moment the leader's presence is removed from that group. The most successful life insurance sales organization and other sales forces meet once a week or more often. For the purpose of what? For the purpose of merging the individual minds into a master mind which will, for a limited number of days, serve as a stimulus to the individual minds. It may be, and generally is, true that the leaders of these groups do not understand what actually takes place in these meetings, which are usually called pep meetings. The routine of such meetings is usually given over to talks by the leader and other members of the group, and occasionally from someone outside of the group. Meanwhile, the minds of the individuals are conducting and recharging one another. The brain of a human being may be compared to an electric battery in that it will become exhausted or run down, causing the owner of it to feel despondent, discouraged, and lacking in pep. Who is so fortunate as never to have had such a feeling? The human brain, when in this depleted condition, must be recharged, and the manner in which this is done is through contact with a more vital mind or minds. The great leaders understood the necessity of this recharging process, and moreover, they understand how to accomplish its result. This knowledge is the main feature which distinguishes a leader from a follower. Fortunate is the person who understands this principle sufficiently well to keep his or her brain vitalized or recharged by periodically contacting it with a more vital mind. Sexual conduct is one of the most effective of the stimuli through which a mind may be recharged, providing the contact is intelligently made between man and woman who have genuine affection for each other. Any other sort of sexual relationship is a devitalizer of the mind. Any competent practitioner of psychotherapeutics can recharge a brain within a few minutes. Before passing away from the brief reference made to sexual conduct as a means of revitalizing a depleted mind, it seems appropriate to call attention to the fact that all of the great leaders, in whatever walks of life they have arisen, have been and are people of highly sexed natures. The word sexed is not an indecent word. You will find it in all the dictionaries. There is a growing tendency upon the part of the best informed physicians and other health practitioners to accept the theory that all diseases begin when the brain of the individual is in a depleted or devitalized state. Stated in another way, it is a known fact that a person who has a perfectly vitalized brain is practically, if not entirely, immune from all manner of disease. Every intelligent health practitioner, or whatever school or type, knows that nature or the mind cures disease in every instance where a cure is effected. Medicines, faith, laying on the hands, chiropractic, osteopathy, and all other forms of outside stimulant are nothing more than artificial aids to nature, or to state it correctly, mere methods of setting the chemistry of the mind into motion to the end that it readjusts the cells and tissues of the body, revitalizes the brain, and otherwise causes the human machine to function normally. The most orthodox practitioner will admit the truth of this statement. What, then, may be the possibilities of the future development in the field of mind chemistry? Through the principle of harmonious blending of minds, perfect health may be enjoyed. Through the aid of this same principle, sufficient power may be developed to solve the problem of economic pressure which constantly pressures upon every individual. We may judge the future possibilities of mind chemistry by taking inventory of its past achievements, keeping in mind the fact that these achievements have been largely the result of accidental discovery and of chance groupings of minds. We are approaching the time when the professorate of the universities will teach mind chemistry the same as other subjects are now taught. Meanwhile, study and experimentation in connection with this subject open vistas of possibilities for the individual student. Mind chemistry and economic power. That mind chemistry may be appropriately applied to the workaday affairs of the economic and commercial world is a demonstrable fact. Through the blending of two or more minds in a spirit of perfect harmony, the principle of mind chemistry may be made to develop sufficient power to enable the individuals whose minds have been thus blended to perform seemingly superhuman feats. Power is the force with which man achieves success in any undertaking. Power in unlimited quantities may be enjoyed by any group of men or men and women who possess the wisdom with which to submerge their own personalities and their own immediate individual interests through the blending of their minds in a spirit of perfect harmony. Observe, profitability, the frequency with which the word harmony appears throughout this introduction. There can be no development of a master mind where this element of perfect harmony does not exist. The individual units of the mind will not blend with the individual units of another until the two minds have been aroused and warmed, as it were, with a spirit of perfect harmony of purpose. The moment two minds begin to take divergent roads of interest, the individual units of each mind separate, and the third element, known as a master mind, which grew out of the friendly or harmonious alliance, will disintegrate. We come now to the study of some well-known men who have accumulated great power and also great fortunes through the application of mind chemistry. Let us begin our study with three men who are known to be men of great achievement in their respective fields of economic, business, and professional endeavor. Their names are Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Harvey Firestone. Of the three, Henry Ford is by far the most powerful, having reference to economic and financial power. Mr. Ford is the most powerful man now living on earth. Many who have studied Mr. Ford believe him to be the most powerful man who ever lived. As far as is known, Mr. Ford is the only man now living, or who ever lived, with sufficient power to outwit the money trust of the United States. Mr. Ford gathers millions of dollars with as great ease as a child fills its bucket with sand when playing on the beach. It has been said by those who were in position to know that Mr. Ford, if he needed it, could send out the call for money and gather it in $1 billion and have it available for use within 1 week. No one who knows of Ford's achievements doubt this. Those who know him well know that he could do it without no more effort than the average man expends in raising the money with which to pay a month's house rent. He could get his money if he needed it, through the intelligent application of the principles on which this course is based. While Mr. Ford's new automobile was in the process of perfection in 1927, it is said that he received advance orders with cash payments for more than 375,000 cars. At an estimated price of $600 per car, this would amount to $225 million, which he received before a single car was delivered. Such is the power of confidence in Ford's ability. Mr. Edison, as everyone knows, is a philosopher, scientist, and inventor. He is perhaps the keenest Bible student on earth, a student of nature's Bible, however, and not of the myriads of man-made Bibles. Mr. Edison has such a keen insight into Mother Nature's Bible that he has harnessed and combined, for the good of mankind, more of nature's laws than any other person now living or who ever lived. It was he who brought together the point of a needle and the piece of revolving wax in such a way that the vibration of the human voice could be recorded and reproduced through the modern talking machine. And it may be Edison who will eventually enable man to pick up and correctly interpret the vibrations of thought which are now recorded in the boundless universe of ether, just as he enabled man to record and reproduce the spoken word. It was Edison who first harnessed the lightning and made it serve as a light for man's use, through the aid of an incandescent electric light bulb. It was Edison who gave the world the modern moving picture. These are but a few of his outstanding achievements, these modern miracles which he has performed not by trickery under the sham pretense of superhuman power, but in the very midst of the bright light of science, transcend all of the so-called miracles described in the man-made books of fiction. Mr. Firestone is the moving spirit in the great Firestone tire industry in Akron, Ohio. His industrial achievements are so well known wherever automobiles are used that no special comment on them seems necessary. All three of these men began their careers, business and professional, without capital and with but little schooling of that type usually referred to as education. All three men are now well educated. All three are wealthy. All three are powerful. Now let us inquire into the source of their wealth and power. Thus far we have been dealing only with effect. The true philosopher wishes to understand the cause of a given effect. It is a matter of general knowledge that Mr. Ford, Mr. Edison, and Mr. Firestone are close personal friends, and have been so for many years. That in former years they were in the habit of going away to the woods once a year for a period of rest, meditation, and recuperation. But it is not generally known, it is a grave doubt if these three men themselves know that there exists between the three men a bond of harmony, which has caused their minds to become blended into a mastermind, which is the real source of the power of each. This mass mind, growing out of the coordination of the individual minds of Ford, Edison, and Firestone, has enabled these men to tune in on forces and sources of knowledge with which most men are no extent familiar. If the student doubts either the principle or the effects here described, let him remember that more than half the theory here set forth is a known fact. For example, it is known that these three men have great power. It is known that they are wealthy. It is known that they began without capital and with but little schooling. It is known that they form periodic mind contacts. It is known that they are harmonious and friendly. It is known that their achievements are so outstanding as to make it impossible to compare these achievements with those of other men in their respective fields of activity. All these effects are known to practically every schoolboy in the civilized world. Therefore, there can be no dispute as far as effects are concerned. Of one fact connected with the cause of achievements of Edison, Ford, and Firestone, we may be sure, namely, that these achievements were in no way based upon trickery, deceit, the supernatural, or the so-called revelations of any other form of unnatural law. These men do not possess a stock of legendarium. They work with natural laws, laws which for the most part are well known to all economists and leaders in the field of science, with the possible exception of the law upon which chemistry of the mind is based. And yet chemistry of the mind is not sufficiently developed to be classified by scientific men in their catalog of known laws. A mastermind may be created by any group of people who will coordinate their minds in a spirit of perfect harmony. The group may consist of any number from 2 upward. Best results appear available from the blending of 6 or 7 minds. It has been suggested that Jesus Christ discovered how to make use of the principle of mind chemistry, and that his seemingly miraculous performance grew out of the power he developed through the blending of the minds of his 12 disciples. It has been pointed out that when one of the disciples, Judas, broke faith, the mastermind immediately disintegrated, and Jesus met with the supreme catastrophe of his life. When 2 or more people harmonize their minds and produce the effect known as a mastermind, each person in the group becomes vested with the power to contact with and gather knowledge through the subconscious minds of all the other members of the group. The power becomes immediately noticeable, having the effect of stimulating the mind to a higher rate of vibration, and otherwise evidencing itself in a form of a more vivid imagination and the consciousness of what appears to be a sixth sense. It is through this sixth sense that new ideas will flash into the mind. These ideas take on the nature and form of the subject, dominating the mind of the individual. In the entire group has met for the purpose of discussing a given subject, ideas concerning that subject will come pouring into the minds of all present, as if an outside influence were dictating them. The minds of these participating in the master mind become as magnets, attracting ideas and thought stimuli on the most highly organized and practical nature from no one knows where. The process of mind blending here described as mastermind may be likened to the act of one who connects many electric batteries to a single transmission wire, thereby stepping up the power flowing over the line. Each battery added increases the power passing over the line by amount of energy that the battery carries. Just so in the case of blending individual minds into a master mind. Each mind, through the principle of mind chemistry, stimulates all the other minds in the group until the mind energy thus becomes so great that it penetrates to and connects with the universal energy, known as ether, which in turn touches every atom of the entire universe. The modern radio apparatus substantiates, to a considerable extent, the theory here expounded. Powerful sending or broadcasting stations must be erected through which the vibration of sound is stepped up before it can be picked up by the much higher vibrating energy of the ether and carried in all directions. A mastermind made up of many individual minds, so blended that they produce a strong vibrating energy, constitutes almost an exact counterpart of the radio broadcasting station. Every public speaker has felt the influence of mind chemistry, for it is a well-known fact that as soon as the individual minds of an audience become in rapport, tuned to the rate of vibration of the mind of the speaker with the speaker, there is a noticeable increase of enthusiasm in the speaker's mind, and he often rises to heights of oratory which surprise all, including himself. The first 5 to 10 minutes of the average speech are devoted to what is known as warming up. By this is meant the process through which the minds of the speaker and his audience are becoming blended in a spirit of perfect harmony. Every speaker knows what happens when this state of perfect harmony fails to materialize upon part of his audience. The seemingly supernatural phenomena occurring in spiritualistic meetings are the result of the reaction upon one another of the minds in the group. These phenomena seldom begin to manifest themselves under 10 to 20 minutes after the group is formed, for the reason that this is about the time required for the minds in the group to become harmonized or blended. The messages received by members of a spiritualistic group probably come from one or two sources, or from both, namely, first, from the vast storehouse of the subconscious mind of some member of the group, or second, from the universal storehouse of the ether, in which it is more than probable all thought vibration is preserved. Neither any known natural law or human reason supports the theory of communication with individuals who have died. It is a known fact that any individual may explore the store of knowledge in another's mind through this principle of mind chemistry, and it seems reasonable to suppose that this power may be extended to include contact with whatever vibrations are available in the ether, if there are any. The theory that all the higher and more refined vibrations, such as those growing out of thought, are preserved in the ether grows out of the known fact that neither matter nor energy, the two known elements of the universe, may be either created or destroyed. It is reasonable to suppose that all vibrations which have been stepped up sufficiently to be picked up and absorbed in the ether will go on forever. The lower vibrations, which do not blend with or otherwise contact the ether, probably live a natural life and die out. All the so-called geniuses probably gained their reputations because, by mere chance or otherwise, they formed alliances with other minds which enabled them to step up their own mind vibrations to where they were enabled to contact the vast temple of knowledge, recorded and filed in the ether of the universe. All of the great geniuses, as far as this author has been enabled to gather the facts, were highly sexed people. The fact that sexual contact is the greatest known mind stimulant lends color to the theory herein described. Inquiring further into the source of economic power as manifested by the achievement of men in the field of business, let us study the case of the Chicago group known as the Big Six, consisting of William Wrigley, Jr., who owns the chewing gum business bearing his name, and whose individual income is said to be more than $15 million a year. J.R. Thompson, who operates a chain of lunchrooms bearing his name. Mr. Lasker, who owns the Lord and Thomas Advertising Agency. Mr. McCullough, who owns the Parmalee Express Company, the largest transfer business in America, and Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Hertz, who own the yellow taxicab business. A reliable financial reporting company has estimated the yearly income of these six men at upwards of $25 million, or at an average of more than $4 million a year per man. Analysis of the entire group of six men discloses the fact that not one of them had any special educational advantage, that all began without capital or extensive credit, that their financial achievement has been due to their own individual plans, and not to any fortunate turn of the wheel of chance. Many years ago, these six men formed a friendly alliance, meeting at stated periods for the purpose of assisting one another with ideas and suggestions in their various and sundry lines of business endeavor. With the exception of Hertz and Ritchie, none of the six men were in any manner associated in a legal partnership. These meetings were strictly for the purpose of cooperating on the give and take basis of assisting one another with ideas and suggestions, and occasionally by endorsing notes and other securities to assist some member of the group who had met with an emergency making such help necessary. It is said that each of the individuals belonging to this Big Six group is a millionaire many times over. As a rule, there is nothing worthy of special comment on behalf of a man who does nothing more than accumulate a few $1 million. However, there is something connected with the financial success of this particular group of men that is well worth commenting. study, analysis, and even emulation, and that something is the fact that they have learned how to coordinate their individual minds by blending them in the spirit of cooperation and perfect harmony, thereby creating a mastermind that unlocks to each individual of the group doors which are closed to most of the human race. The United States Steel Corporation is one of the strongest and most powerful industrial organizations in the world. The idea out of which this great industrial giant grew was born in the mind of Elbert Gary, a more or less commonplace small-town lawyer who was born and reared in a small Illinois town near Chicago. Mr. Gary surrounded himself with a group of men whose mind he successfully blended in a spirit of perfect harmony, thereby creating the mastermind, which is the moving spirit of the great United States Steel Corporation. Search where you will, however, you find an outstanding success in business, finance, industry, or in any of the professions, you may be sure that back of the success is some individual who has applied the principle of mind chemistry, out of which a mastermind has been created. These outstanding successes often appear to be the handiwork of but one individual, but search closely and the other individuals whose minds have been coordinated with his may be found. Remember that two or more persons may operate the principle of mind chemistry so as to create a master mind. Power, or manpower, is organized knowledge expressed through intelligent efforts. No effort can be said to be organized unless the individuals engaged in the effort coordinate their knowledge and energy in a spirit of perfect harmony. Lack of such harmonious coordination of effort is the main cause of practically every business failure. An interesting experiment was conducted by this author in collaboration with the students of a well-known college. Each student was requested to write an essay on how and why Henry Ford became wealthy. Each student was required to describe, as a part of his or own essay, what was believed to be the nature of Ford's real asset, of what these assets consisted in detail. The majority of the students gathered financial statements and inventories of the Ford assets and used these as the basis of their estimates of Ford's wealth. Included in these sources of Ford's wealth were such as cash in banks, raw and finished materials and stock, real estate and buildings, goodwill, estimated at 10 to 25% of the value of material assets. One student out of the entire group of several hundred answered as follows. Henry Ford's assets consist in the main of two items. 1. Working capital and raw and finished materials. 2. The knowledge gained from experience of Henry Ford, himself, and the cooperation of a well-trained organization which understands how to apply this knowledge to best advantage from the Ford viewpoint. It is impossible to estimate, with anything approximating correctness, the actual dollars and cents value of either of these two groups of assets. But it is my opinion that their relative values are: the organized knowledge of the Ford organization, 75%. The value of cash and physical assets of every nature, including raw and finished material, 25%. This author is of the opinion that this statement was not compiled by the young man whose name was signed to it without the assistance of some very analytical and experienced mind or minds. Unquestionably, the biggest asset that Henry Ford has is his own brain. Next to this would come the brains of his immediate circle of associates, for it has been through coordination of these that the physical assets which he controls were accumulated. Destroy every plant the Ford Motor Company owns, every piece of machinery, every atom of raw or finished material, every finished automobile, and every dollar on deposit in any bank, and Ford would still be the most powerful man economically on earth. The brains which have built the Ford business could duplicate it again in short order. Capital is always available in unlimited quantities to brains such as Ford. Ford is the most powerful man on earth economically because he has the keenest and most practical conception of the principle of organized knowledge of any man on earth, as far as this author has the means of knowing. Despite Ford's great power and financial success, it may be that he has blundered often in the application of the principles through which he accumulated his power. There is but little doubt that Ford's method of mind coordination have often been crude. They must needs have been in the earlier days of this experience, before he gained the wisdom of application that would naturally go with any maturity of years. Neither can there be much doubt that Ford's application of the principle of mind chemistry was at least at the start the result of a chance alliance with other minds, particularly the mind of Edison. It is more than probable that Mr. Ford's remarkable insight into the laws of nature was first begun as the result of his friendly reliance with his own wife long before he ever met Mr. Edison or Mr. Firestone. Many a man who never knew the real source of his success is made by his wife, through application of the mastermind principle. Mrs. Ford is a most remarkably intelligent woman, and this author has reason to believe that it was her mind, blended with Mr. Ford's, which gave him his first real start towards power. It may be mentioned, without any way depriving Ford of any honor or glory, that in his earlier days of experience he had to combat the powerful enemies of illiteracy and ignorance to the greater extent than did either Edison or Firestone. Both of him were gifted by natural hereditary with a most fortunate aptitude for acquiring and applying knowledge. Ford had to hew his talent out of the rough, raw timbers of his hereditary estate. Within an inconceivably short period of time, Ford has mastered three of the most stubborn enemies of mankind and transformed them into assets constituting the very foundation of his success. These enemies are ignorance, illiteracy, and poverty. Any man who can stay the hand of these three savage forces, much less harness and use them to good account, is well worth close study by the less fortunate individuals. This is an age of industrial power in which we are living. The source of all this power is organized effort. Not only has the management of industrial enterprises efficiently organized individual workers, but in many instances, mergers of industries have been effected in such a manner and to the end that these combinations, as in the case of United States Steel Corporation, for example, have accumulated practically unlimited power. One may hardly glance at the news of a day's events without seeing a report of some business, industrial or financial merger, bringing under one management enormous resources and thus creating great power. One day it is a group of banks, another day it is a chain of railroads. The next day it is a combination of steel plants, all merging for the purpose of developing power through highly organized and coordinated effort. Knowledge, general in nature and unorganized, is not power. It is only potential power, the material of which real power may be developed. Any modern library contains an unorganized record of all the knowledge of value to which the present stage of civilization is heir. But this knowledge is not power because it is not organized. Every form of energy and every species of animal or plant life to survive must be organized. The oversized animals whose bones have filled nature's boneyard through extinction have left mute but certain evidence that non-organization means annihilation. From the electron, the smallest particle of matter, to the largest star in the universe, these and every material thing in between these two extremes offer proof positive that one of nature's first laws is that of organization. Fortunate is the individual who recognizes the importance of this law and makes it his business to familiarize himself with the various ways in which the law may be applied to advantage. The astute businessman has not only recognized the importance of the law of organized effort, but he has made this law the warp and the woof of his power. Without any knowledge whatsoever of the principle of mind chemistry, or that such a principle even exists, many men have accumulated great power by merely organizing the knowledge they possessed. The majority of all who have discovered the principle of mind chemistry and developed that principle into a mastermind have stumbled upon this knowledge by the merest of accident, often failing to recognize the real nature of their discovery or to understand the source of their power. This author is of the opinion that all living persons who at the present time are consciously making use of the principle of mind chemistry in developing power through the blending of minds may be counted on the fingers of two hands, which perhaps several fingers left to spare. If this estimate is even approximately true, the student will readily see that there is but slight danger of the field of mind chemistry practice becoming overcrowded. It is a well-known fact that one of the most difficult tasks that any business person must perform is that of inducing those who are associated with him to coordinate their efforts in a spirit of harmony. To induce continuous cooperation between a group of workers in any undertaking is next to impossible. Only the most efficient leaders can accomplish this highly desired object, but once in a great while such a leader will rise above the horizon in the field of industry, business, or finance, and then the world hears of a Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, John Rockefeller Sr., E. Harriman, or James J. Hill. Power and success are practically synonymous terms. One grows out of the other. Therefore, any person who has the knowledge and the ability to develop power through the principle of harmonious coordination of efforts between individual minds, or in any other manner, may be successful in any reasoning undertaking that is possible of successful termination. It must not be assumed that a master mind will immediately spring, mushroom fashion, out of every group of minds which makes pretense of coordination in the spirit of harmony. Harmony in the real sense of meaning of the word is as rare among groups of people as is genuine Christianity among those who proclaim themselves Christians. Harmony is the nucleus around which the state of mind known as mastermind must be developed. Without this element of harmony, there can be no mastermind, a truth which cannot be repeated too often. Woodrow Wilson had in mind the development of a mastermind to be composed of groups of minds representing the civilized nations of the world, in his proposal for establishing the League of Nations. Wilson's conception was the most far-reaching humanitarian idea ever created in the mind of man, because it dealt with a principle which embraces sufficient power to establish a real brotherhood of man on earth. The League of Nations, or some similar blending of international minds in a spirit of harmony, is sure to become a reality. The time when such unity of minds will take place will be measured largely by the time required for the great universities and non-sectarian institutions of learning to supplant ignorance and superstition with understanding and wisdom. This time is rapidly approaching. The psychology of the revival meeting. The old religious orgy known as the revival offers a favorable opportunity to study the principle of mind chemistry known as mastermind. It will be observed that music plays no small part in bringing about the harmony essential to the blending of a group of minds in a revival meeting. Without music, the revival meeting would be a tame affair. During revival services, the leader of the meeting has no difficulty in creating harmony in the minds of his devotees. But it is a well-known fact that this state of harmony lasts no longer than the presence of the leader, after which the mastermind has always temporarily created disintegrates. By arousing the emotional nature of the followers, the revivalist has no difficulty, under the proper stage setting and with the embellishment of the right sort of music, in creating a master mind which becomes noticeable to all who come in contact with it. The very air becomes charged with a positive, pleasing influence which changes the entire chemistry of all minds present. The revivalist calls this energy the Spirit of the Lord. This author, through experiments conducted with a group of scientific investigators and laymen who were unaware of the nature of the experiment, has created the same state of mind and the same positive atmosphere without calling it the Spirit of the Lord. On many occasions, this author has witnessed the creation of the same positive atmosphere in a group of men and women engaged in the business of salesmanship, without calling it the Spirit of the Lord. The author helped conduct a school of salesmanship for Harrison Parker, founder of the Cooperative Society of Chicago, and by the use of the same principle of mind chemistry, which the revivalist calls the Spirit of the Lord, so transformed the nature of a group of 3,000 men and women, all of whom were without former sales experience, that they sold more than $10 million worth of securities in less than 9 months, and earned more than $1 million for themselves. It was found that the average person who joined this school would reach the zenith of his or own selling power within 1 week, after which it was necessary to revitalize the individual's brain through a group sales meeting. These sales meetings were conducted on very much the same order as are the modern revival meetings of the religionist, with much the same stage equipment, including music and high-powered speakers, who exhorted the salespeople in very much the same manner as does the modern religious revivalist. Call it religion, psychology, mind chemistry, or anything you please. They are all based upon the same principle. But there is nothing more certain than the fact that wherever a group of minds are brought into contact in a spirit of perfect harmony, each mind in the group becomes immediately supplanted and reinforced with a noticeable energy called a master mind. For all this writer professes to know, this uncharted energy may be the Spirit of the Lord, but it operates just as favorably when called by any other name. The human brain and nervous system constitute a piece of intricate machinery which but few, if any, understand. When controlled and properly directed, this piece of machinery can be made to perform wonders of achievement, and if not controlled, it will perform wonders fantastic and phantom-like in nature, as may be seen by examining the inmates of an insane asylum. The human brain has different connection with a continuous influx of energy from which man derives his power to think. The brain receives this energy, mixes it with the energy created by the food taken in the body, and distributes it to every portion of the body. Through the aid of the blood and the nervous system, it thus becomes what we call life. From what source this outside energy comes, no one seems to know. All we know about it is that we must have it or die. It seems reasonable to suppose that this energy is none other than that which we call ether, and that it flows into the body along with the oxygen from the air as we breathe. Every normal human body possesses a first-class chemical laboratory and a stock of chemicals sufficient to carry on the business of breaking up, assimilating, and properly mixing and compounding the food we take into the body, preparatory to distributing it to wherever it is needed as a body builder. Ample tests have been made, both with man and beast, to prove that the energy known as the mind plays an important part in this chemical operation of compounding and transforming food into the required substances to build and keep the body in repair. It is known that worry, excitement, or fear will interfere with the digestive process, and in extreme cases stop this process altogether, resulting in illness or death. It is obvious, then, that the mind enters into the chemistry of food digestion and distribution. It is believed by many eminent authorities, although it may never have been scientifically proved, that the energy known as mind or thought may become contaminated with negative or unsociable units to such an extent that the whole nervous system is thrown out of the working order. Digestion is interfered with, and various and sundry forms of disease will manifest themselves. Financial difficulties and unrequited love affairs head the list of causes of such mind disturbances. A negative environment such as that existing where some members of the family is constantly nagging will interfere with the chemistry of the mind to such an extent that the individual lose ambition and gradually sink into oblivion. It is because of this fact that the old saying that a man's wife may either make or break him is literally true. In a subsequent lesson, a whole chapter on this subject is addressed to the wives of men. Any high school student knows that certain food combinations will, if taken into the stomach, result in indigestion, violent pain, and even death. Good health depends, in part at least, upon a food combination that harmonizes, But harmony of food combinations is not sufficient to ensure good health. There must be harmony also between the units of energy known as the mind. Harmony seems to be one of nature's laws, without which there can be no such thing as organized energy, or life in any form whatsoever. The health of the body as well as the mind is literally built around, out of, and upon the principle of harmony. The energy known as life begins to disintegrate, and death approaches when the organs of the body stop working in harmony. The moment harmony ceases at the source of any form of organized energy, the units of that energy are thrown into a chaotic state of disorder, and the harmony is rendered neutral or passive. Harmony is also the nucleus around which the principle of mind chemistry, known as a master mind, develops power. Destroy this harmony, and you destroy the power growing out of the coordinated effort of a group of individual minds. This truth has been stated, restated, and presented in every manner which the author could conceive, with the unending repetition, for the reason that unless the student grasps this principle and learns to apply it, this lesson is useless. Success in life, no matter what one may call success, is very largely a matter of adaptation to environment in such a manner that there is harmony between the individual and his environment. The palace of a king becomes as a hovel of a peasant if harmony does not abound within the walls. Conversely stated, the hut of a peasant may be made to yield more happiness than that of a mansion of the rich man, if harmony obtains in the former and not in the latter. Without perfect harmony, the science of astronomy would be as useless as the bones of a saint, because the stars and planets would clash with one another, and all would be in a state of chaos and disorder. Without the law of harmony, an acorn might grow into a heterogeneous tree consisting of the wood of the oak, poplar, maple, and whatnot. Without the law of harmony, the blood might deposit the food which grows fingernails on the scalp, where hair is supposed to grow, and thus create a horny growth which might easily be mistaken by the superstitious to signify man's relation to a certain imaginary gentleman with horns, often referred to by the more primitive type. Without the law of harmony, there can be no organization of knowledge, for what, may one ask, is organized knowledge, except the harmony of facts and truth and natural laws? The moment discord begins to creep in at the front door, harmony edges out the back door. So to speak, whether the application is made to a business partnership or the orderly movement of the planets of the heavens. If the student gathers the impression that the author is laying undue stress upon the importance of harmony, let it be remembered that lack of harmony is the first, and often the last and only cause of failure. There can be no poetry, nor music, nor oratory worthy of notice without the presence of harmony. Good architecture is largely a matter of harmony. Without harmony, a house is nothing but a mass of building material, more or less a monstrosity. Sound business management plants the very sinews of its existence in harmony. Every well-dressed man or woman is a living picture and a moving example of harmony. With all these workaday illustrations of the important part which harmony plays in the affairs of the world, nay, in the operation of the entire universe, how could any intelligent person leave harmony out of his definite aim in life? As well have no definite aim as to omit harmony as the chief stone of its foundation. The human body is a complex organization of organs, glands, blood vessels, nerves, brain cells, muscles, etc. The mind energy which stimulates to action and coordinates the efforts of the component parts of the body is also a plurality of ever-varying and changing energies. From birth until death there is a continuous struggle, often assuming the nature of open combat between the forces of the mind. For example, the lifelong struggle between the motivating forces and desires of the human mind, which takes place between the impulses of right and wrong, is well known to everyone. Every human being possesses at least two distinct mind powers or personalities, and as many as 6 distinct personalities having been discovered in one person. One of man's most delicate tasks is that of harmonizing these mind forces so that they may be organized and directed toward the orderly attainment of any given object. Without this element of harmony, no individual can become an accurate thinker. It is no wonder that leaders in business and industrial enterprises, as well as those in politics and other fields of endeavor, find it so difficult to organize groups of people so they will function in the attainment of any given objective without friction. Each individual human possesses forces within himself which are hard to harmonize, even when he is placed in the environment most favorable to harmony. If the chemistry of the individual's mind is such that the units of his mind cannot be easily harmonized, think how much more difficult it must be to harmonize a group of minds so they will function as one, in an orderly manner, through what is known as a mastermind. The leader who successfully develops and directs the energy of a mastermind must possess tact, patience, persistence, self-confidence, intimate knowledge of a mind chemistry, and the ability to adapt himself in a state of perfect poise and harmony to quickly changing circumstances without showing the least sign of annoyance. How many are there who can measure up to this requirement? The successful leader must possess the ability to change the color of his mind, chameleon-like, to fit every circumstance that arises in connection with the object of his leadership. Moreover, he must possess the ability to change from one mood to another without showing the slightest signs of anger or lack of self-control. The successful leader must understand the 15 laws of success and be able to put into practice any combination of these 15 laws whenever occasions demand. Without this ability, no leader can be powerful, and without power, no leader can long endure. The meaning of education. There has long been a general misconception of the meaning of the word educate. The dictionaries have not aided in the elimination of this misunderstanding, because they have defined the word educate as an act of imparting knowledge. The word educate has its roots in the Latin word educo, which means to develop from within, to educe, to draw out, to grow through the law of use. Nature hates idleness in all its forms. She gives continuous life only to those elements which are in use. Tie up an arm or any other portion of the body, taking it out of use, and the idle part will soon atrophy and become lightless. Reverse the order. Give an arm more than normal use, such as that engaged in by the blacksmith who wields a heavy hammer all day. Long, and that arm, developed from within, grows strong. Power grows out of organized knowledge, but mind you, it grows out of it through application and use. A man may become a walking encyclopedia of knowledge without possessing any power of value. This knowledge becomes power only to the extent that it is organized, classified, and put into action. Some of the best educated men the world has known possessed much less general knowledge than some who have been known as fools. The difference between the two being that the former put what knowledge they possessed into use, while the latter made no such application. An educated person is one who knows how to acquire everything he needs in the attainment of his main purpose in life, without violating the laws and rights of his fellow men. It might be a surprise to many so-called men of learning to know that they come nowhere near qualification as men of education. It might also be a great surprise to many who believe they suffer from lack of learning to know that they are well educated. The successful lawyer is not necessarily the one who memorizes the greatest number of principles of law. On the contrary, the successful lawyer is the one who knows where to find a principle of law, plus a variety of opinions supporting that principle which fit the immediate needs of a given case. In other words, the successful lawyer is he who knows where to find the law he wants when he needs it. This principle applies with equal force to the affairs of industry and business. Henry Ford had but little elementary schooling, yet he is one of the best educated men in the world because he has acquired the ability so to combine natural and economic laws, to say nothing of the minds of men, that he has the power to get anything of a material nature he wants. Some years ago, during the World War, Mr. Ford brought suit against the Chicago Tribune, charging the newspaper with libelous publication of statements concerning him, one of which was the statement that Ford was an ignoramus, an ignorant pacifist, etc. When the suit came up for trial, the attorneys for this Tribune undertook to prove, by Ford himself, that their statement was true, that he was ignorant, and that with this object in view, they cactized and cross-examined him on all manners of subject. One question they asked was, how many soldiers did the British send over to subdue the rebellion in the colonies in 1776? With a dry grin on his face, Ford nonchalantly replied, I do not know just how many, but I have heard that it was a lot more than ever went back. Loud laughter from court, jury, courtroom spectators, and even from the frustrated lawyer who had asked the question. The line of interrogation was continued for an hour or more, Ford keeping perfectly calm the meanwhile. Finally, however, he had permitted the smart-aleck lawyers to play with him until he was tired of it, and in reply to a question which was particularly obnoxious and insulting, Ford straightened himself up, pointed his finger at the questioning lawyer, and replied, If I should really wish to answer the foolish question you have just asked, or any of the others you have been asking, let me remind you that I have a row of electric push-buttons hanging over my desk, and by placing my finger on the right button, I could call in men who could give me the correct answer to all the questions you have asked, and to many that you have not the intelligence either to ask or to answer. Now will you kindly tell me why I should bother about filling my mind with a lot of useless details in order to answer every fool question that anyone may ask, when I have able men all about me who can supply me with all the facts I want when I call for them? This answer is quoted from memory, but it substantially relates Ford's answer. There was silence in the courtroom. The questioning attorney's underjaw dropped down. His eyes opened widely. The judge leaned forward from the bench and gazed in Mr. Ford's direction. Many of the jury awoke and looked around as if they had heard an explosion, which they actually had. A prominent clergyman who was present in the courtroom at the time said later that the scene reminded him of that which must have existed when Jesus Christ was on trial before Pontius Pilate, just after he had given his famous reply to the Pilate's question, "What is truth?" In the vernacular of the day, Ford's reply knocked the questioner cold. Up to the time of that reply, the lawyer had been enjoying considerable fun at what he believed to be Ford's expense, by adroitly displaying the lawyer's, sample case of general knowledge, and comparing it with that which he inferred to be Ford's ignorance as to many events and subjects. But that answer spoiled the lawyer's fun. It also proved once more, to all who had the intelligence to accept the proof, that true education means mind development, not merely the gathering and classifying of knowledge. Ford could not, in all probability, have named the capitals of all the states of the United States, but he could have, and in fact had gathered the capital with which to turn many wheels within every state in the Union. Education, let us not forget, this consists of the power with which to get everything one needs when he needs it, without violating the rights of his fellow men. Ford comes well within that definition, and for that reason which the author has here tried to make plain, by relating the foregoing incident connected with the simple Ford philosophy. There are many men of learning who could easily entangle Ford, theoretically, with a maze of questions, none of which he personally could answer. But Ford could turn right around and wage a battle in industry or finance that would exterminate those same men with all of their knowledge and all of their wisdom. Ford could not go into his chemical laboratory and separate water into its component atoms of hydrogen and oxygen, and then recombine those atoms in their former order. But he knows how to surround himself with chemists who can do this for him if he wants it done. The man who can intelligently use the knowledge possessed by another is as much or more a man of education as the person who merely has the knowledge but does not know what to do with it. The president of a well-known college inherited a large tract of very poor land. This land had no timber or commercial value, no minerals or other valuable appurtenances. Therefore it was nothing but a source of expense to him, but he had to pay taxes on it. The state built a highway through the land. An uneducated man who was driving his automobile over this road observed that this poor land was on top of a mountain, which commanded a wonderful view for many miles in all directions. He, the ignorant one, also observed that the land was covered with a growth of small pines and other saplings. He bought 50 acres of the land for $10 an acre. Near the public highway he built a unique log house to which he attached a large dining room. Near the house he put in a gasoline filling station. He built a dozen single-room log houses along the road. Those he rented out to tourists at $3 a night each. The dining room, gasoline filling station, and log houses brought him a net income of $15,000 the first year. The next year he extended his plans by adding 50 more log houses of 3 rooms each, which he now rents out as summer country homes to people in nearby city at a rental of $150 each for the season. The building material cost him nothing, for it grew on his land in abundance, the same land which the college professor believed to be worthless. Moreover, the unique and unusual appearance of the log bungalows served as an advertisement of the plan, whereas many would have considered it a real calamity had they been compelled to build out of such crude materials. Less than 5 miles from the location of these log houses, this same man purchased an old worked-out farm of 150 acres for $25 an acre, a price which the seller believed to be extremely high. By building a dam 100 feet in length, the purchaser of this old farm turned a stream of water into a lake that covered 15 acres of that land, stocked the lake with fish, then sold the farm off in building lots to people who wanted summering places around the lake. The total profit realized from this simple transaction was more than $25,000, and the time required for its consummation was just 1 summer. Yet this man of vision and imagination was not educated in the orthodox meaning of that term. Let us keep in mind the fact that it is through these simple illustrations of the use of organized knowledge that one may become educated and powerful. In speaking of the transaction here related, the college president who sold 50 acres of worthless land for $500 said, "Just think of it, that man, whom most of us might call ignorant, mixed his ignorance with 50 acres of worthless land and made the combination yield more yearly than I earned from 5 years of application of so-called education." There is an opportunity, if not scores of them, in every state in America to make use of the idea here described. From now on, make it your business to study the lay of all land you see that is similar to that described in this lesson, and you may find a suitable place for developing a similar money-making enterprise. The idea is particularly adaptable in localities where bathing beaches are few, as people naturally like such conveniences. The automobile has caused a great system of public highways to be built throughout the United States. On practically every one of these highways there is a suitable spot for a cabin city for tourists, which can be turned into a regular money-making mint by the man with the imagination and self-confidence to do it. There are opportunities to make money all around you. This course was designed to help you see these opportunities and to inform you how to make the most of them after you discover them. Who can profit most by the law of success philosophy? Railroad officials who want a better spirit of cooperation between their trainmen and the public they serve. Salaried people who wish to increase their earning power and market their services to better advantage. Salespeople who wish to become masters in their chosen field. The law of success philosophy covers every known law of selling and includes many features not included in any other course. Industrial plant managers who understand the value of greater harmony among their employees. Railroad employees who wish to establish records of efficiency which will lead to more responsible positions with greater pay. Merchants who wish to extend their business by adding new customers. The Law of Success philosophy will help any merchant increase his business by teaching him how to make a walking advertisement of every customer who comes into his store. Automobile agents who wish to increase the selling power of their salesmen. A large part of the Law of Success course was developed from the life, work, and experience of the greatest automobile salesman living, and it is therefore of unusual help to the sales manager who is directing the efforts of automobile salesmen. Life insurance agents who wish to add new policyholders and increase the insurance on present policyholders. One life insurance salesman in Ohio sold a $50,000 policy to one of the officials of the Central Steel Company. As the result of but one reading of the lesson on profiting by failures, this same salesman has become one of the star men of the New York Life Insurance Company's staff as the result of his training in the 15 Laws of Success. School teachers who wish to advance to the top in their present occupation, or who are looking for an opportunity to enter the more profitable field of business as a life work. Students, both college and high school, who are undecided as to what field of endeavor they wish to enter as life work. The Law of Success course covers a complete personal analysis service which helps the student of the philosophy to determine the work for which he or she is best fitted. Bankers who wish to extend their business through better and more courteous methods of servicing their clients. Bank clerks who are ambitious to prepare themselves for executive positions in the field of banking or in some commercial or industrial field. Physicians and dentists who wish to extend their practice without violating the ethics of their profession by direct advertising. A prominent physician has said that the Law of Success course is worth thousands of dollars to any professional man or woman whose professional ethics prevent direct advertising. Promoters who wish to develop new and hitherto unworked combinations in business or industry. The principle described in this introductory lesson is said to have made a small fortune for a man who used it as the basis of a real estate promotion. Real estate men who wish new methods for promoting sales. This introductory lesson contains a description of an entirely new real estate promotion plan, which is sure to make fortunes for many who will put it to use. This plan may be put into operation into practically every state. Moreover, it may be employed by men who never promoted an enterprise. Farmers who wish to discover new methods of marketing their products so as to give them greater net returns, and those who own lands suitable for subdivision promotion under the plan referred to at the end of this introductory lesson. Thousands of farmers have gold mines in the land they own which is not suitable for cultivation, which could be used for recreation and resort purposes on a highly profitable basis. Stenographers and bookkeepers who are looking for a practical plan to promote themselves into higher and better paying positions. The Law of Success course is said to be the best course ever written on the subject of marketing personal services. Printers who want a larger volume of business and more efficient production as the result of better cooperation among their own employees. Day laborers who have the ambition to advance into more responsible positions in work that has greater responsibilities and consequently offers more and better pay. Lawyers who wish to extend their clientele through dignified, ethical methods which will bring them to the attention in a favorable way of a greater number of people who need legal services. Business executives who wish to expand their present business or who wish to handle their present volume with less expense as a result of greater cooperation between their employees. Laundry owners who wish to extend their business by teaching their drivers how to serve more courteously and efficiently. Life insurance general agents who wish bigger and more efficient sales organizations. Chain store managers who want a greater volume of business as a result of more efficient individual sales efforts. Married people who are unhappy and therefore unsuccessful because of lack of harmony and cooperation in the home. To all described in the foregoing classification, the Law of Success philosophy offers both definite and speedy aid. Summary of introductory lesson. The purpose of this summary is to aid the student in mastering the central idea around which the lesson has been developed. This idea is represented by the term mastermind, which has been described in great detail throughout this lesson. All new ideas, and especially those of an abstract nature, find lodgment in the human mind only after much repetition. A well-known truth which accounts for the restatement in this summary of the principle known as the mastermind. A mastermind may be developed by a friendly alliance in the spirit of harmony of purpose between two or more minds. This is an appropriate place at which to explain that out of every alliance of minds, whether in a spirit of harmony or not, there is developed another mind which affects all participating in the alliance. No two or more minds ever met without creating, out of the contact, another mind, but not always in this invisible creation a mastermind. There may be, and altogether too often there is, developed out of the meeting of two or more minds a negative power, which is just the opposite to a mastermind. There are certain minds which, as has already been stated throughout this lesson, cannot be made to blend in the spirit of harmony. This principle has its comparable analogy in chemistry, reference to which may enable the student to grasp more clearly the principle here referred to. For example, the chemical formula H2O, meaning the combining of two atoms of hydrogen with one atom of oxygen, changes these two elements into water. One atom of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen will not produce water. Moreover, they cannot be made to associate themselves in harmony. There are many known elements which, when combined, are immediately transformed from harmless into deadly, poisonous substances. Stated differently, many will know poisonous elements are neutralized and rendered harmless when combined with certain other elements. Just as the combining of certain elements changes their entire nature, the combining of certain minds changes the nature of those minds, producing either a certain degree of what has been called a mastermind, or its opposite, which is highly destructive. Any man who has found his mother-in-law to be incompatible has experienced the negative application of the principle known as a mastermind. For some reason, as yet unknown to investigators in the field of mind behavior, the majority of mother-in-law appear to affect their daughter husbands in a highly negative manner, the meeting of their minds with those of their son-in-laws creating a highly antagonistic influence instead of a mastermind. This fact is too well known as a truth to make extended comment necessary. Some minds will not be harmonized and cannot be blended into a mastermind, a fact which all leaders of men will do well to remember. It is the leader's responsibility so to group his men that those who have been placed at the most strategic points in his organization are made up of individuals whose minds can and will be blended in a spirit of friendliness and harmony. Ability so to group men is the chief outstanding quality of leadership. In Lesson 2 of this course, the student will discover that his ability was the main source of both the power and fortune accumulated by the late Andrew Carnegie. Knowing nothing whatsoever of the technical end of the steel business, Carnegie so combined and grouped the men of which his mastermind was composed that he built the most successful steel industry known to the world during his lifetime. Henry Ford's gigantic success may be traced to the successful application of this self-same principle. With all the self-reliance a man could have, Ford nevertheless did not depend upon himself for the knowledge necessary in the successful development of his industry. Like Carnegie, he surrounded himself with men who supplied the knowledge which he himself did not and could not possess. Moreover, Ford picked men who could and did harmonize in group effort. The most effective alliances which have resulted in the creation of the principle known as the mastermind have been those developed out of the blending of the minds of men and women. The reason for this is the fact that the minds of male and female will more readily blend in harmony than will the minds of males. Also, the added stimulus of sexual contact often enters into the development of a mastermind between a man and a woman. It is a well-known fact that the male of the species is keener and more alert for the chase, let the goal or object of the chase be what it may, when inspired and urged on by a female. This human trait begins to manifest itself in the male at the age of puberty and continues throughout his life. The first evidence may be observed in athletes, where boys are playing before an audience made up of females. Remove the woman from the audience and the game known as football would soon become a very tame affair. A boy will throw himself into a football game with almost superhuman effort when he knows that a girl of his choice is observing him from the grandstand. And that same boy will throw himself into the game of accumulating money with the same enthusiasm when inspired and urged on by a woman of his choice, especially if that woman knows how to stimulate his mind with her own, through the law of the mastermind. On the other hand, that same woman may, through a negative application of the law of mastermind, nagging, jealousy, selfishness, greed, and vanity, drag this man down to sure defeat. The late Elbert Hubbard understood the principle here described so well that when he discovered that the incompatibility between himself and his first wife was dragging him down to sure defeat, he ran the gamut of public opinion by divorcing her and marrying the woman who was said to have been the main source of his inspiration. Not every man would have had the courage to defy public opinion, as Hubbard did, but who is wise enough to say that his action was not for the best interest of all concerned? A man's chief business in life is to succeed. The road to success may be, and generally is, obstructed by many influences which must be removed before the goal can be reached. One of the most detrimental of these obstacles is that of unfortunate alliance with minds which do not harmonize. In such cases, the alliance must be broken, or the end is sure to be defeat and failure. The man who has mastered the 6 basic fears, one of which is the fear of criticism, will have no hesitancy in taking what may seem to be a more convention-based type of mind to be drastic action when he finds himself circumscribed and bound down by antagonistic alliances, no matter of what nature or with whom they may be. It is 1,000,000 times better to meet and face criticism than to be dragged down to failure and oblivion on account of alliances which are not harmonious, whether the alliance be of a business or social nature. To be perfectly frank, the author is here justifying divorce, when the conditions surrounding marriage are such that harmony cannot prevail. This is not intended to convey the belief that lack of harmony may not be removed through other methods than that of divorce, for there are instances where the cause of antagonism may be removed and harmony established without taking the extreme step of divorce. While it is true that some minds will not blend in a spirit of harmony, and cannot be forced or induced to do so, because of the very chemical nature of the individual's brain, do not be too ready to charge the other party to your alliance with all the responsibility of lack of harmony. Remember, the trouble may be with your own brain. Remember also that a mind which cannot and will not harmonize with one person or persons may harmonize perfectly with other types of minds. Discovery of this truth has resulted in radical changes in methods of employing men. It is no longer customary to discharge a man because he does not fit in the position for which he was originally hired. The discriminating leader endeavors to place such a man in some other position where it has been proved more than once misfits may become valuable men. The student of this course should be sure that the principle described as the mastermind is thoroughly understood before proceeding with the remaining lessons of this course. The reason for this is the fact that practically the entire course is closely associated with this law of mind operation. If you are not sure that you understand this law, communicate with the author of the course and secure further explanation by asking such questions as you may wish concerning points in connection with which you believe you cannot need further information. You cannot spend too much time in serious thought and contemplation in connection with the law of the mastermind, for the reason that when you have mastered this law and have learned how to apply in new worlds of opportunity will open for you. This introductory lesson, while not really intended as a separate lesson of the Law of Success course, contains sufficient data to enable the student who has an aptitude for selling to become a master salesman. Any sales organization may make effective use of the law of the mastermind by grouping the salesmen in groups of 2 or more people who will lay themselves in a spirit of friendly cooperation and apply this law as suggested in this lesson. An agent for a well-known make of automobile who employs 12 salesmen has grouped his organization in 6 groups of 2 men each, with the object of applying the law of the mastermind, with the results that all salesmen have established new high sales records. This same organization has created what it calls the one-a-week club, meaning that each man belonging to the club has averaged the sale of 1 car a week since the club was organized. The results of this effort have been surprising to all. Each man belonging to the club was provided with a list of 100 prospective purchasers of automobiles. Each salesman sends 1 postal card a week to each of his 100 prospective purchasers and makes personal calls on at least 10 of these each day. Each postal card is confined to the description of but one advantage of the automobile the salesman is selling and asks for a personal interview. Interviews have increased rapidly, as have also sales. The agent who employs these salesmen has offered an extra cash bonus to each salesman who earns the right to membership in the one-a-week club by averaging 1 car a week. The plan has injected new vitality into the entire organization. Moreover, the results of the plan are showing in the weekly sales record of each salesman. A similar plan could be adopted very effectively by life insurance agencies. Any enterprising general agent might easily double or even triple the volume of his business with the same number of salesmen through the use of this plan. Practically no changes whatsoever would need to be made in the method of use of the plan. The club might be called the Policy of a Week Club, meaning that each member pledged himself to sell at least 1 policy of an agreed minimum amount each week. The student of this course who has mastered the second lesson and understands how to apply the fundamentals of that lesson, a definite chief aim, will be able to make much more effective use of the plan here described. It is not suggested or intended that any student shall undertake to apply the principles of this lesson, which is merely an introductory lesson, until he has mastered at least the next 5 lessons of the Law of Success course. The main purpose of this introductory lesson is to state some of the principles upon which the course is founded. These principles are more accurately described, and the student is taught in a very definite manner how to apply them in the individual lessons of the course. The automobile sales organization referred to in this summary meets at luncheon once a week. 1 hour and a half is devoted to luncheon and to the discussion of ways and means of applying the principles of this course. This gives each man an opportunity to profit by the ideas of all the other members of the organization. 2 tables are set for the luncheon. At one table, all who have earned the right to membership in the one-a-week club are seated. At the other table, which is serviced with tinware instead of china, all who did not earn the right to membership in the club are seated. This, needless to say, becomes the object of considerable good-natured chiding from the more fortunate members seated at the other table. It is possible to make an almost endless variety of adaptations to this plan, both in the field of automobile salesmanship and in other fields of selling. The justification for its use is that it pays. It pays not only the leader or manager of the organization, but every member of the sales force as well. This plan has been briefly described for the purpose of showing the student of this course how to make practical application of the principles outlined in this course. The final acid test of any theory or rule or principle is that it will actually work. The law of the mastermind has been proved sound because it does work. If you understand this law, you are now ready to proceed with Lesson 2, in which you will be further and much more deeply initiated in the application of the principles described in this introductory lesson. Your 6 most dangerous enemies, an after the lesson visit with the author. Every person on earth is afraid of something. Most fears are inherited. In this essay, you may study the 6 basic fears which do the most damage. Your fears must be mastered before you can win in any worthwhile undertaking in life. Find out how many of the 6 fears are bothering you. But more important than this, determine also how to conquer these fears. In this picture, you have the opportunity to study our 6 worst enemies. These enemies are not beautiful. The artist who drew this picture and did not paint the 6 characters as ugly as they really are. If he had, no one would have believed him. As you read about these ugly characters, analyze yourself and find out which of them does you the most damage. The purpose of this essay is to help the readers of this course throw off these deadly enemies. Observe that the 6 characters are at your back where you cannot conveniently see them. Every human being on this earth is bound down to some extent by one or more of these unseen fears. The first step to be taken in killing off these enemies is to find out where and how you acquired them. They got their grip upon you through 2 forms of hereditary. One is known as physical hereditary, to which Darwin devoted so much study. The other is known as social hereditary, through which the fears, superstitions, and beliefs of men who lived during the Dark Ages have been passed on from one generation to another. Let us study first the part that physically hereditary has played in creating these 6 basic fears. Starting at the beginning, we find that nature has been a cruel builder, from the lowest form of life to the highest. Nature has permitted the stronger to prey upon the weaker forms of animal life. The fish prey upon the worms and insects, eating them bodily. Birds prey upon the fish. Higher forms of animal life prey upon the birds and upon one another, all the way up the line to man, and man preys upon all the lower forms of animal life, and upon man. The whole story of evolution is one unbroken chain of evidence of cruelty and destruction of the weaker by the stronger. No wonder the weaker forms of animal life have learned to fear the stronger. The fear consciousness is born in every living animal. So much for the fear instinct that came to us through physical hereditary. Now let us examine social hereditary and find out what part it has played in our makeup. The term social heredity has reference to everything that we are taught, everything we learn or gather from observation and experience with other living beings. Lay aside any prejudices and fixed opinions you may have formed, at least temporarily, and you may know the truth about your 6 worst enemies, starting with the fear of poverty. It requires courage to tell the truth about the history of this enemy of mankind, and still greater courage to hear the truth after it has been told. The fear of poverty grows out of man's habit of preying upon his fellow men, economically. The animals which have instinct but no power to think prey upon one another physically. Man, with his superior sense of intuition and his more powerful weapon of thought, does not eat his fellow man bodily. He gets more pleasure from eating him financially. So great an offender is man in this respect that nearly every state and nation has been obliged to pass laws, scores of laws, to protect the weak from the strong. Every blue sky law is indisputable evidence of man's nature to prey upon his weaker brother economically. The second of the 6 basic fears with which man is bound down to is the fear of old age. This fear grows out of 2 major causes. First, the thought that old age may bring with it poverty. Secondly, from false and cruel sectarian teachings, which have been so well mixed with fear and brimstone that every human being learned to fear old age, because it meant the approach of another and perhaps a more horrible world than this. The third of the 6 basic fears is the fear of ill health. This fear is born of both physical and social heredity. From birth until death, there is eternal warfare within every physical body. Warfare between groups of cells, one group being known as the friendly builders of the body, the other as the destroyers or disease germs. The seed of fear is born in the physical body, to begin with, as the result of nature's cruel plan of permitting the strong forms of cell life to prey upon the weaker. Social heredity has played its part through the lack of cleanliness and knowledge of sanitation. Also through the law of suggestion, cleverly manipulated by those who profited by ill health. The fourth of the 6 basic fears is the fear of loss of love of someone. This fear fills the asylums with the insanely jealous, for jealousy is nothing but a form of insanity. It also fills the divorce courts and causes murders and other forms of cruel punishment. It is a holdover, handed down through social heredity, from the Stone Age, when man preyed upon his fellow man by stealing his mate by physical force. The method, but not the practice, has now changed to some extent. Instead of physical force, man now steals his fellow man's mate with pretty colorful ribbons and fast motor cars and bootleg whiskey and sparkling rocks and stately mansions. Man is improving. He now entices where once he drove. The fifth of the 6 basic fears is the fear of criticism. Just how and where man got this fear is difficult to determine, but it is certain that he has it. But for this fear, men would not become bald-headed. Bald heads come from tightly fitting hat bands, which cut off the circulation from the roots of the hair. Women seldom are bald because they wear loose-fitting hats. But for fear of criticism, man would lay aside his hat and keep his hair. The makers of clothing have not been slow to capitalize this basic fear of mankind. Every season the styles change, because the clothes makers know that few people have the courage to wear a garment that is one season out of step with that they call all-wearing. If you doubt this, you gentlemen, start down the street with last year's narrow-brimmed straw hat on, when this year's style calls for the broad brim. Or you ladies, take a walk down the street on Easter morning with last year's hat on. Observe how many uncomfortable glares you are, thanks to your unseen enemy, the fear of criticism. The 6th and the last of the 6 basic fears is the most dreaded at all. It is called the fear of death. For tens of thousands of years, man has been asking the still unanswered question, whence and whither? The more crafty of the race have not been slow to offer the answer to this eternal question. Where did I come from, and where am I going after death? Come into my tent, says one leader, and you may go to heaven after death. Heaven was then pictured as a wonderful city whose streets were lined with gold and studded with precious stones. Remain out of my tent, and you may go straight to hell. Hell was then pictured as a blazing furnace where the poor victims might have the misery of burning forever in brimstone. No wonder mankind fears death. Take another look at the picture at the beginning of this essay and determine, if you can, which of the 6 basic fears is doing you the greatest damage. An enemy discovered is an enemy half-whipped. Thanks to the schools and colleges, man is slowly discovering these 6 enemies. The most effective tool with which to fight them is organized knowledge. Ignorance and fear are twin sisters. They are generally found together. But for ignorance and superstition, the 6 basic fears would disappear from man's nature in one generation. In every public library may be found the remedy for these 6 enemies of mankind, providing you know what books to read. Begin by reading The Science of Power by Benjamin Kidd, and you will have broken the stranglehold of most of your 6 basic fears. Follow this by reading Emerson's essay on compensation. Then select some good book on autosuggestion or self-suggestion, and inform yourself on the principle through which your beliefs of today become the realities of tomorrow. Mind in the Making by Robinson will give you a good start towards understanding your own mind. Through the principle of social heredity, the ignorance and superstition of the Dark Ages have been passed on to you. But you are living in the modern age. On every hand you may see evidence that every effect has a natural cause. Begin now to study effects by their causes, and soon you will emancipate your mind from the burden of the 6 basic fears. Begin by studying men who have accumulated great wealth, and find out the cause of their achievement. Henry Ford is a good subject to start with. Within the short period of 25 years, he has whipped poverty and made himself the most powerful man on earth. There was no luck or chance or accident back of his achievement. It grew out of his careful observation of certain principles, which are as available to you as they were to him. Henry Ford is not bound down by the 6 basic fears. Make no mistake about this. If you feel that you are too far away from Ford to study him accurately, then begin by selecting 2 people whom you know close at hand, one representing the idea of failure, and the other corresponding to your idea of success. Find out what made one a failure and the other a success. Get the real facts. In the process of gathering these facts, you will have taught yourself a great lesson on cause and effect. Nothing ever just happens. Everything, from the lowest animal form that creeps on the earth or swims in the sea, on up to man, is the effect of nature's evolutionary process. Evolution is orderly change. No miracles are connected with this orderly change. Not only do the physical shapes and colors of animals undergo slow, orderly change from one generation to another, but the mind of man is also undergoing constant change. Herein lies your hope for improvement. You have the power to force your mind through a process of rather quick change. In a single month of properly directed self-suggestion, you may place your foot upon the neck of every one of your 6 basic fears. In 12 months of persistent effort, you may drive the entire herd into the corner where it will never again do you any serious injury. You will resemble, tomorrow, the dominating thoughts that you keep alive in your mind today. Plant in your mind the seed of determination to whip your 6 basic fears, and the battle will have been half won then and there. Keep this intention in your mind, and it will slowly push your 6 worst enemies out of sight, as they exist nowhere except in your own mind. The man who is powerful fears nothing, not even God. The powerful man loves God, but fears him never. Enduring power never grows out of fear. Any power that is built upon fear is bound to crumble and disintegrate. Understand this great truth, and you will never be so unfortunate as to try to raise yourself to power through the fears of other people who may owe you temporary allegiance. Verse: Man is of soul and body formed for deeds of high resolve on fancy's bold wing, to soar unwearied, fearlessly to turn, to keenest pains, to peacefulness and taste, the joys which mingled sense and spirit yield. Or he is formed from abjectness and woe, to grovel on the dunghill of his fears, to shrink at every sound, to quench the flame of natural love and sensualism to know. That hour is blessed when on his worthless days the frozen hand of death shall set its seal. Yet fear the cure, though hating the disease. The one is man that shall hereafter be, the other, man is vice, has made him now. Shelley. End of Lesson 1.